I think to do something without purpose, and I call it soul purpose, is just a waste of time, life and energy. Everything that we do, including starting a business, really should come from the heart and should come from a vision of wanting to create something better for the generations to come, better for our community, better for ourselves, healthier, well-being.
Hello to all our new listeners and welcome back if you're already a fan. You are in for an electrifying start to season 3. I'm your host, Bex Byrne-Callender, and I'm here with the PR luminary, Lynn Franks OBE. She has represented all the greats from the world of fashion and entertainment. She helped create London Fashion Week and created the Seed Handbook, a guide to business and strategy specifically aimed at women. Now 75, she is a business coach and a staunch activist. On today's show, we're going to explore some epic themes, from how to build your confidence as an entrepreneur, to marketing on a budget, to the power of self-reinvention. Welcome, Lynn. Thanks so much for joining me on the show.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Bex. Nice to see you again.
And I feel like you have the most sparkling and incredible career spanning so many different industries and themes. And I want to just gather all of that up and distill it into something that the listeners can benefit from, because there's just a wealth of information there. But maybe we should start sort of at the beginning. So you went into PR, but before that you were a journalist, is that right? So how did you come to find what you loved and your calling in life, I guess?
Well, I was very young. I left school at 16 and I worked as a secretary, actually, and went to work at Freeman's Mail Order Company, writing stories, interviewing their agents at the time. It was all a very new thing. And from there, I couldn't get a job as a journalist that I wanted. So I went to work as a temp in some PR office and thought, this is my type of thing. PR didn't really exist, actually, in those days like it does now. And as it did, as I developed it, it was about relationships. Of course, we didn't have the technology. We were faxing everything. We didn't even have mobile phones, if you can imagine, certainly not social media. So it was a very, very different time. But it was about relationships, but in a way it still kind of is. So I worked for another person who was involved with fashion for a few months. And in that period, I met the designer Catherine Hamnett, who was this very louche, tall, elegant, eccentric, bohemian designer. And I absolutely loved her, and I loved her work. And we sort of decided we'd work together. So she was paying me £20 a week, which I rarely got. And I set up a business from my kitchen table and worked on the weekends still as a secretary to earn the money to pay for my rent. And off I went. So that was how Lynn Franks PR got born. And I was about 21 then, and really learnt on the job. I've completely left out. No, I did say I was on Petticoat Magazine. So I was working on Petticoat Magazine as a secretary for a while. So I worked with Janet Street Porter and Eve Pollard and met lots of women who at that point were like me, kind of pioneers in the kind of media industry for young people. It was just a changing world, young women particularly, fashion and beauty. It was 60s, early 70s. So I set up my PR business when I was 21 in about 1970. That's when it all started. And so...
But as you say, it was a nascent industry then. Like, you were creating a space, basically. So what did PR look and feel like then when you were, I guess, building that whole niche from scratch?
Well, it was a series... Fashion PR was very much on its own. So fashion PR consisted of a certain amount of individual women that would be... phoning around the various fashion press, Vogue and Sunday Times and other sort of important publications, and persuading the journalists to come and have a look at the collections of the people they represented. So it was very much, that was it. PR of a more corporate kind, where I actually worked for a while as a secretary, was very male-led, and it consisted of a lot of former military guys who were networking in their way and would go out for very long lunches and come back pretty pissed, placing sort of corporate stories on their clients. And then I got involved in promoting Cadbury's drinking chocolate and going around carol singing with pop stars around, banging on people's houses to get stories in magazines of these pop stars drinking Cadbury's drinking chocolate. I mean, it was kind of bizarre times. It just wasn't anything like it was now. We didn't really, even though we were working with pop stars, it wasn't really the celebrity culture, it wasn't the fashion culture, it was a very, very different world. We didn't have catwalk shows in the same way. There'd be a few shows in salons and showrooms, but it was just a completely different world. And so that was the world that I came into. And I've always had lots of ideas and been very creative. So I built up a team fairly quickly of young, talented, creative, mostly girls, but some guys as well. And they worked for me, and we did all these extraordinary projects. And it was great fun, and culminating in creating London Fashion Week as it became, putting up these tents, first of all in Kensington, and then after that in the King's Road, where the designers all held their shows. And I created the British Fashion Awards, which have now become, of course, the biggest fashion awards in the world. And I was just going along doing the things I loved. And I did Fashion Aid, which was part of Live Aid, where I worked with Bob Geldof and Harvey Goldsmith and Jasper Conran and filmmaker Kevin Godley and others, creating this enormous event at the Albert Hall where we were raising funds for, same as Live Aid, for Ethiopia. But we had every fantastic rock star from Annie Lennox to Freddie Mercury to Madness, all modelling all the top designers, not just the British designers, but designers from all around the world, all their clothes in the middle of the Albert Hall. I mean, so many things that was just fun at the times. I created the biggest initiative for AIDS and HIV to create awareness of that. Which was horrible and very prevalent in the fashion industry. So we did a lot of fundraising and awareness campaigns around that. I got involved with environmental and human rights campaigns. So even though I was doing fashion, I was always very aware that there was a lot of causes that I could use the same skill sets with that would bring awareness so that people knew what was going on. And I guess I still do that. So human rights as well as women's rights, sexual violence against women. I've got very involved with that over a number of years. So it's always been alongside what I've been doing.
Mm. And that brings us back to that point about relationships, because it seems that throughout your career, one of your great strengths is that you're extremely persuasive. I mean, with the London Fashion Week thing, you persuaded these designers basically to fund this new idea by sponsoring these tents, kind of putting a bit of money in here and there.
Well, so it wasn't the designers. The designers didn't have any money. What I did was I went out to my clients who had money, not the designers, and asked them for money to be sponsors. So I got Moen Majani, who was a very large manufacturer, had a large company, who made Gloria Vanderbilt jeans, and Tommy Hilfiger. I got him to give me money to put the first tent up, and we called it the Majani Designer Focus. And then once we went to the King's Road, where it was then the Chelsea Barracks, and it became where the Saatchi Gallery is now in Sloane Square, I got Harrods to give me, Harrods were clients of mine, they gave me some money. Swatch watches were clients of mine, I got them to give me some money to be the official timekeepers, and there were all sorts of other clients. So I would actually raise the funds from sponsors, so the designers who didn't have a penny could actually have a great catwalk environment. They were really keen for me to do it because they didn't have somewhere to show. And once we got to the King's Road, we had wonderful facilities where we had like 2 big catwalk areas. In the middle we had a cafe and a press room, and then we had other spaces inside the building there where the smaller designer shows could be held. And we had, those were the days of when the pop stars of the time, we'd have Boy George and Spandau Ballet and others all working together with the designers. And we have Princess of Wales, that was when Princess Diana was very much an ambassador of British fashion, and we'd have Madonna sitting in the front row. I mean, it was amazing times. This was kind of early 80s, which I'm told is 40 years ago recently. Somebody said it's the 40th anniversary, I didn't even know. But it's 40th anniversary since we started doing those catwalk shows. And then the British Fashion Council got formed, which I was very much part of. And we worked together with the exhibition side where they were selling the products, London Designer Collections. But the catwalk side of it was something that I got the funding for and helped organise. And it's great times. great times.
Well, I will rephrase my question then, which is that throughout your career, you have been very persuasive, from getting corporates to add sponsorship to these projects, letting fledgling designers show their wares, and getting pop stars to get involved with your project. So I want to know, what is the secret to your persuasion? How have you been so great during your career at showing people your vision, at getting people to part with their capital to support these projects? Like, for our listeners who are all building businesses, like, how did you do it?
Well, really, I was so passionate about what I was doing, and I so deeply believed in what I was doing, that it wasn't difficult to become persuasive. And when I really care about things, whether they be making sure that people are aware of the sexual violence that's used against women in war zones, or whether it's creating sponsorship for young creatives, when I'm passionate, I will make the call. I will go and talk to somebody. I will explain to them how I feel about what this could do to help others. And I guess because I believe in what I do, and because I'm passionate and authentic, other people, it sort of sparks something in others. But for everybody that agrees to sponsor, or everybody agrees to get involved, there's obviously others that don't get involved. But when I really am behind something, I'll make it happen. And it's just my enthusiasm, I think. Even now, I still, when I'm enthusiastic and I feel that there's something that I believe in that really needs to come to life, I'll make sure it happens.
Yeah, enthusiasm can be really infectious, especially,
Yes.
as you say, authentic enthusiasm. It's really hard to resist.
It's not like a heavy sales pitch. It's something I really, truly believe in my heart. And that's what really comes out, I suppose.
You're so passionate about female empowerment as a theme that's run through your whole career. I'd like to talk about the Seed Handbook. So tell me a bit about that project. Why did you feel there was a gap in the market for a sort of business Bible that was specifically for women? And how was that received? How has that kind of changed the way that women are building businesses? Tell me about that project.
Okay, so this is a very original Seed Handbook here in my hand. It's all very colourful, and it's full of exercises and lovely illustrations. And I just felt, this was 23 years, this came out in 2000, so 24 years ago now. I just felt there was going to come a time, and I'm always a little bit early with my premonitions, when women would want to start their own small businesses. And SEED is an acronym for Sustainable Enterprise and Empowerment Dynamics, the feminine way to create business. And I was really the first person that talked about sort of collaboration between women, and the fact that they could work from home, and by working together could create something bigger than what they could do on their own. And that a lot of women would leave the corporate world because they want to do something with more akin with their values. And it's also about personal development. I mean, Seed became a huge body of content. Again, I've got it here in front of me. I don't know if it will show when you do the visual of this, but the audio, it's a huge...
It's a massive tome.
huge amount of work that... gone into very, very in depth 20 years ago, which we have delivered in different ways to women in prisons, women in the corporate world, versions of where self-confidence is the biggest thing that holds women back so often. So it starts with a lot of personal development about really seeing who you are, what are your values, what are your skills, what are your passions, and then taking that into some kind of business, whether it's collectively or individually. In fact, I'm literally about to start work with a new group of women locally where I live in Somerset, who have never had a business and would have got dreams of having one of all ages, who would like help to take them through that journey. So it still goes on. I just felt there was going to be this real hunger. So at that point, there were no books out there to teach women how to start a business. There were none, because I was living in the United States at the time. I moved to California. I sold my business, moved to California. And, if the book wasn't out there, it wasn't out anywhere. And the book came out simultaneously in the US and the UK. And I did workshops all over the States as well as the UK. And it was such a new thing for women. It's not that long ago, 23 years ago. I mean, I had a website. It was just the beginning of the internet, really, for women. Prior to that, actually, I put on a big event in London called What Women Want. That was in 95. And that was before I went to live in the States. And that was because there was going to be this huge conference happening in China. The UN Women's Conference is the biggest conference ever been held, even today, for women. I was also skipping a lot because I was also chair of a women's radio station around then. So I went to China to the conference. But because it was happening, I put on What Women Want. And we talked to the women there about many things, about owning our own bodies, the power of the consumer, the green consumer, creatively, what we can do as women, but also I talked about business and how we can make changes in the internet. And women that were there, it really wasn't that long ago, if you think about it, had never tried to be on the internet at that point. Now, of course, how would we do without it? We didn't. Mobile phones were new. I mean, it was all very, very fresh. So because of, if you like, the freedom that technology has given women, so they can work from home. And now, of course, ironically, with lockdown and the whole pandemic, women have got even more used to working from home with Zooms, meetings, now got to the point where they need to get out more because they're so used to working from home on their computer, which is why I'm about to start a co-working space, which I'll talk a little bit more about later on, where women can just pop in and out. But anyway, so back to Seed. I can't remember what the question was now, but it was clear there was going to be coming a time when women wanted to start their own small businesses and be in charge of their own lives and work around their families if that's the way their life was going, and have more freedom. But we've gone forward and we've gone back. I mean, being taken seriously, having support from the government, having support from the banks. I mean, I don't know that we're a long way forward to how we were even 23 years ago, but now really is the time, which is why I'm putting so much energy into updating all my materials and going back to training and mentoring women to get out there and do their own thing.
But it's interesting you say that the kind of long-standing theme, the thing that holds women back, is confidence. And that seems to be true throughout the decades, the generations. So what is it about women, if we can generalise? What point do we get a knock to our confidence, or do we doubt our abilities? And why is that something that's so pervasive?
Well, it's the culture. I mean, it's 2,000 years plus of a patriarchal society. We are supposedly moving into the Aquarian age now. Let's hope we are. But we've just had, just recently, the next COP conference coming up in what's the name of the country? Azerbaijan. And they this has just happened this week, a council for this event, COP, whatever number it is. And there were 26 people on that council, and none of them were women. So there was a huge hoorah on social media, and they've now put something like 6 women up there. We're still living in a world which is run by men, unbelievably, 2024. Yeah. And we have to create a new kind of future. But that's why young women have a lot more confidence. And I think it comes to a certain age where looking around, suddenly it's not women running the world. I mean, you do have women that have senior jobs in all sorts of businesses, but they often have to do it and behave in a certain way which is not conducive to kind of more a feminine way of working, which for me, the feminine way of working, if I can put it into a few phrases, is about much more working on intuition, much more working collaboratively, really caring about heart-based business as opposed to just always thinking about the financial rewards. That doesn't mean to say every business has to make money to survive, but it doesn't have to be the main focus.
The driver.
It should be much more about values. So the work that I do is always about really getting in touch with your values. They're so important. So just what are feminine values? When I've worked with women, I've worked with over the years McDonald's and HSBC and Tesco's, all others on women's leadership networks and engagement. So we always start off with what are the feminine values? And it always starts off with integrity, authenticity, transparency, community, creativity, which I'm not saying that men don't care about those values as well, but they're not there necessarily their priority, certainly in business. As for women, values in their own lives and values in their business tend to be very similar, are the same. So
that's interesting.
I think the weakness with that is that we women, and I include myself, have to remember that businesses have to pay their bills. And in the current world, I mean, apart from doing the coaching and mentoring and consulting that I do, I also have 2 buildings in Somerset next to each other, and they're both public faced. And one is beautiful, vegan cafe, but to run any kind of high street business now is so challenging. And I wouldn't advise anyone going into hospitality. We're now we have to be very flexible about how we run our businesses and what we do with them. And so that's why I'm turning my beautiful space into a co-working space where other women can come and meet like-minded women and work together and network. And that's, I think, what women are also very hungry for is community. No question about that. So we're offering that. We do offer that. I do offer that all the time with the groups that I coach.
Well, that brings me neatly onto the topic of reinvention, which is something that you've talked about quite a lot in the past, and you have certainly reinvented yourself. And when you were talking about that vegan cafe that you were running, it's not working in the current environment, so you are reinventing the space as a kind of co-working, women's co-working space. So talk to me about reinvention, and how do you have the energy to sort of pare back and start again each time? And how do you, I suppose, on the theme of confidence we were just talking about, how do you proceed with confidence into a new, untried, untested avenue?
Well, it's not easy. I mean, my energy again always comes from my enthusiasm. I see new things that are needed, and so in a very relaxed way, it's not so relaxed actually, I work really hard, but in a way that I kind of flow into things. I can see that that's not working in the current world and the current economic climate, but there is a need for this. And that, in fact, I think it was about 10 years ago, I started Beehive as a women's co-working space in partnership with Regis, and I had a wonderful space in Covent Garden in a beautiful old building, and we had one in Bristol and one in Manchester, and it was really very successful. And it was just the beginning when women wanted to start working from home and wanted to come to a space where they could work with others and have their meetings. Of course, now we have a lot of them. I mean, I go to Albrights when I'm in London, which is a wonderful big women's business club, and you've got all the Soho House places. But then there was nothing. We lost the building because Regis didn't actually own the freehold, and it became a cafe, unfortunately. But we were there for 3 years, and it was always busy and always women coming together, again, early days. So I can see that there's that need now in Somerset. And since I announced it very lightly on social media, saying I'm thinking of doing this, we've had lots of women getting in touch with us, because I live in Wincanton, which is really right in the centre. It's on the crux. It's in Somerset, but it's really on the crux of Somerset, Wiltshire and Dorset. We're near lots of big towns. We're near Glastonbury and Frome and Sherborne and Salisbury. So and we get people, because I've been doing women's events here for the last, apart from when COVID was, and we closed down since I've been here, which is about 5 or 6 years. So we get women from all around the area that come here for our events anyway. So we're in a very sort of good position, accessibly to the dreaded 303 and to the train stations. So I think right now, I'm really looking forward to when we open our doors, which is early February, to having events here as well. It's not just women want to work in a space where other women are working. It's about having, like I learned from Beehive, networking events and opportunities for them to promote their businesses to others and work together. So that's, I know, is where things are going right now. Your question is, where do I get the energy from? It always comes back to sort of seeing what's needed and feeling enthusiastic. And I'm writing a new book, which I did start writing 5 years ago and then left, and I need to go back to it, which I'm calling The Pod Effect. And it's how small groups of women, 7 roughly, can get together and create initiatives in their communities, whether it to be perhaps growing organic vegetables together for the community, or it could be that they want to do upcycling fashion together, or maybe just help each other do their own businesses. So the Pod Effect is, that's sort of going along the way, and I'm actually living it as well as writing it, because as I said earlier, I'm starting a new group where I live of women who I'm mentoring through that process. And the last 2 years I've been working really closely with groups of teenagers, mentoring them, mostly girls, but not exclusively, and really working with them on confidence and what's going on in the world. And a lot of them were coming from creative studies, so explaining what the world is like outside Somerset in the areas they were interested in, like graphics. Of course, most of them are very interested in AI and technology, so I learned from them too, I must say. But I guess the enthusiasm really comes from this opportunity to share ideas and be creative. It's always where I get my energy from, I guess. I mean, I am getting older, and I don't know how long it will go on, but right now I'm full of all sorts of ideas and busier than ever, actually.
And what brought you to Somerset? Because you were born in North London, and obviously you lived in the States as well. So it's a real change of pace to be down in Somerset now. What prompted that move, and how did you adjust, I suppose, after life in the fast lane?
Yeah, well, I hadn't lived in London properly for a long time. And I also was at home for many years in Mallorca, which I don't have anymore, but I did for 25 years. So I was actually going through this from California to Mallorca, mostly. And then I came back from the States, and I've lived all over the place. I was in Oxfordshire, I was in Sussex, I was moving really regularly. And I came to Somerset. I mean, I knew Somerset, of course, and had been to Glastonbury Festival a number of times. But I came particularly for a weekend with friends, and I just suddenly realised that's where I was supposed to be, and found my buildings are these two old listed 15th century buildings in the middle of this little town. Eventually, I rented somewhere here for a year and got to know the area and thought, I just feel I'm supposed to be here. So I sold up everything and just brought my whole life into this one town. There's two buildings, one I work in, one I live in, and it felt right. So again, using my intuition, using my inner voice, I felt this is where I'm supposed to be. And it's not a slow pace here in Somerset, and there's a lot that goes on. I'm just up the road from Bruton. There's a lot goes on, a lot of creative people. What I love about it is the community aspects, because it's not only people in this town, but the fact that I've got friends all over the area of, for miles in the southwest. And because we don't have traffic jams unless you get stuck behind a tractor, you can go 20 miles in 20 minutes. Well, not 20 minutes, but it takes half an hour to go anywhere really. And so my friends are all dotted around, new friends, people I've known for years. It's very kind of community focused, community led, and it's everything I like. And I find it a lot friendlier than, say, living in London. I haven't lived full time in London for 30 years, and I would find it very difficult. And I go to London generally, I get a Berries bus they called, from almost outside where I live, takes me into Hammersmith. I'm in London for the day, and then I get the bus back again and it stops outside and I'm home, and it's always like a big relief that I can get back here. It suits me. I love it. And, everybody's working in so many different places now. I mean, I don't know where you are, Bex, at the moment, but so many people. Where are you sitting at right now?
I'm in York. I was in London, but I moved to York 6 months ago. So this is my new Yorkshire life.
I mean, aren't we lucky? We can do that. You can live in beautiful Yorkshire, which I love. I've got lots of friends up north. And I can live in wonderful Somerset. And if we need to go into town, we go into town. And then we can come back even the same day. And here we are sort of talking on Zoom, and it's perfect, really. But ironically, the reason I'm opening this co-working space I keep going on about is the fact that I think people, they like to live in different places, but they don't want to be too isolated. So it's getting that balance right, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially after COVID, I think, because I work from home, and I had that feeling after the pandemic where it's like, get me into an office, let me see other people, let me find a space next to the water cooler where I could just gossip with people I don't know that well, just get me out. So I think you're completely right that kind of co-working spaces, the boom is happening now. People want to get out and about.
It is. Well, you can help me start a seed co-working space in York then.
I'd be delighted. I'd be absolutely delighted.
Well, you could do that one. That would be great.
But I feel like it would be great to find out your advice to sort of founders starting new projects, because you have done so many new projects. Is there a particular approach or mindset or way of working that you found has helped you gain momentum really quickly? So when you are, I don't know, starting a new co-working space, or you're creating a retreat package, or in your PR days, you were like putting together some fabulous event. Like, what is it that helps you gain momentum quickly, and how can other founders sort of learn from your approach?
Well, I think it's important to be part of a team, even if it's a support team, because just talking to myself doesn't go far. I mean, I have a small team here and I talk everything through, and I need feedback as well. So, and when I had the PR company, I had a big team, 50 people, and we worked very much collectively. So I think it's really important to have And if you are a solopreneur, it really, really is important to have your pod, as I call it, which goes back to the pod effect. And pod is another acronym. I love acronyms, and that's Power on Demand. And you can just talk things through. And I run these Zoom coaching groups, both for business and personal development. Power of 7 of my personal development ones, based on 7 archetypes that I've developed. And the other one is Soul to Soil, which is my business groups. And I have been doing that for quite a few years, well, since the pandemic. And I get groups of 7 to 10 women who are all over the country, and they work with me once a month for about 6-7 months. And we have a WhatsApp group, and I watch this group come together, share their stories, even on a Zoom, and how close they all get, and how they start supporting each other, and how they start telling each other stories and giving each other advice. And it gives me such pleasure. I've got 2 groups going at the moment. I did one last Saturday, and I've got one next Saturday, and I can see the Soul to Soil business group absolutely bloom by the input from each other. So I think that's really the most important thing, is you have your pod, you have your group that you work with and network. You share. Absolutely essential. And I've got a whole, in the Seed Handbook, there's a whole manifesto of all sorts of things that I wrote, as I said, 20 odd years ago. One of them is keep improving your technology skills. And even at this point in my life, and when I was running the PR company, I didn't know how to use a computer. But it's really important that I know, here's my trusted phone, and I'm on WhatsApp all the time. And I, like everybody else, first thing I do in the morning is just check my messages, because people are writing to me from all over the place. And, we live in a communications time. So it's very important to not drift when you not pick up your messages, basically. I find it very frustrating when I try to get hold of people and they spend days before they get back to me. But, that's just me. I mean, I get back to people really fast. I think it's a really important part of any career, really, is that you don't disappear. Or if you don't want to work with that person, or you don't want to deal with it, just go back and say, I'm sorry, I'm too busy at the moment to deal. Just don't leave people hanging. Deal with your mail, deal with your WhatsApps. Or come off the group, or whatever. So, keep improving your technology skills, understand about social media. And we haven't talked about social media. And I mean, there's a lot of things about social media which are obviously a bit suspect, particularly for young people. But it's really important to understand about posting and why. I mean, if I was retired and I was living a private life, I wouldn't bother with social media. But even there, I've got family and friends all over the world. And, it's a way of letting everybody know that I'm okay or my family's okay, to other members. So it is an incredible communications tool. So I just think that, it's really important that we keep up with everything, even at my age.
Because you do YouTube videos, and I know that you're active on X, formerly Twitter. Do you have like a social media strategy? And do you have is it just the relationship building, or do you feel like you have really nifty posts that will get the right kind of engagement that you need at that time?
Well, I'm not on Twitter very much, actually, hardly at all, because actually I don't really feel that's it's political, it's aggressive, and it's not really where I sit. I'm probably mostly on Instagram, and that is promoting the various things I do. And I do something every Friday called Friday Thoughts. So my Instagram tag is Lynn J. Franks, if anybody wants to know. And I do deal with messages I get there. And my Instagram posts go automatically through to Facebook, and it's just keeping an eye on it, because 1 minute, because it's all down to algorithms and AIs and bots. So 1 minute Instagram's going up, then it's Facebook's going up, and then LinkedIn is important for business connections. I don't use it as much as I should, because otherwise I'd go crazy on all of them all the time. But LinkedIn is important. So there's different things, different reasons. The Facebook's about community, Instagram's about news and information and building up a brand, and LinkedIn is really much more sort of corporate and business, and some of the big stuff that I'm also involved with as far as women and women's enterprise and women's investment are concerned are very much LinkedIn based.
That's interesting. You have different channels for different kinds of communication.
Yes.
And I'm also just keen to learn from your experience on the sort of PR and marketing front, because I know a lot of our listeners are either in the early throes of building businesses, or, they're at that kind of inflection point where they're trying to go from a very small business to kind of step up. And to do that, you need to be able to market your brand. You need PR. What are some of the really smart campaigns you've done? Ideally cheap, like not spending a huge amount of money, but still making a big impact that our listeners can learn from.
Well, the social media is the tool for all of us, and there is no reason why there isn't some platform there for everybody. And the women that I work with on my coaching group, I mean, we talk about that all the time. I mean, if you want to build up your Instagram numbers, and it's not always about numbers. I mean, people with huge numbers may not have the right people following them. Sometimes it's better to have 5,000 people who are really committed than 100,000 people who are more bots mostly. But I mean, Instagram Lives, it's really coming out with a strategy for social media. But print media and broadcast media are also very, very important. And local, it really does start with local, especially now, because local media is far easier to get involved in what you're doing, wherever you're based. And then quite often the national media will pick up from the local media. So, my book, The Seed Handbook, which is still available as an ebook or even to buy it, I'm going to be actually working on this program I talked about before. I'm digitalizing it. A lot of it's going to be on marketing and PR, and people can also come to my workshops online where I go into more detail on how to write a press release, how to get it out there, who to get it out to. There's no one thing fits all, because people are in lots of different areas of business, and some are in B2B. So really you're just interested in the business world. So then LinkedIn is really where you would need to be. So it's about what your business is, where it needs to be, and getting used to the sound of your voice to be able to talk about what you're promoting. I mean, I'm doing an exercise with the women in my current coaching group next time we meet up, and I've asked all of them to do 5 minutes where they will present their concept and their story and what is so special about their business and how to bring it into people's lives. Because sometimes we're not clear enough about, I've worked with enough women now to know that it's not always that clear what actually their business ideas are. It's especially in the coaching area, which so many of them are doing. So it's getting that specific language out there and explaining exactly what you do is hard sometimes, and it comes from practice. But the more you do little films or lives on social media, the easier it will get. And we look at somebody like the phenomenal success of Trini, who is with her makeup brand. She built it up on social media as well as TV. I mean, Trini has been doing TV from before there ever was social media, so she knew what she was doing. But I mean, just keep watching other people that you think are good and learn from the way they do it, I think.
But she is just a natural, like she is a one-take wonder. When you see her sauntering out of an elevator and then she's just goes into what she's wearing, what she's been doing that week, and there's not a break, there's not a cutaway. It's all completely flawless. I mean, definitely to watch her as like a self-publicist, but I think we would all be like that. I could never do that.
No, she's an example. I think most women watch Trini and say, how does she do it? But we must remember that when she was with Susanna, it was Trini and Susanna back in the day when I was in the fashion world myself, they were doing television all the time, so they had a lot of practice, and it's all about confidence. I mean, any of us can do that if we feel good. We don't all have Trini's great posture and looks and everything else, but we all have our own style, and it's just being natural, coming from the heart. Don't feel you have to work to a script. Just know what you want to put over there and just come out in the most natural way you possibly can, that is true to yourself. I mean, I did something last week where I do regularly make films, but I just literally put the camera or the phone up in front of my face and I just said whatever I said, and I just was true to myself about something that I wanted to share, and I had the most amazing reaction. And I found that some of my best reactions are things where I haven't got it all set up and organized. It's just literally me putting the phone on and just talking to the phone and being myself. I think that's really what everybody wants in a way.
Yeah, not too rehearsed, but shoot from the hip style.
Yeah, be yourself.
And what about times when things have gone wrong? So you've just mentioned a time when you weren't reading from a script, you just wanted to talk about something you were passionate about and you got a great response. Have there been times, and we love hearing about mistakes that people have made and what they learned from them, have there been times when something has backfired, gone terribly wrong, and what happened in the aftermath?
Well, I don't think anything went terribly wrong. You just learn. I mean, I don't think there's anything that's about mistakes or regretting anything, because it's just another opportunity to learn from. So as I said, I put this kitchen and this wonderful facilities together for a vegan cafe, and then who knew the pandemic was coming? And also the wonderful woman that was running it for the first 6 months decided to go off and live in Italy. So I didn't know that was coming either. I never managed to replace her ever since. So, there's always things that turn up that you don't expect. But as I said, it's always got to be a learning curve, and be flexible and say, okay, well, that hasn't worked like that, but if I just do it a different way, perhaps it will. So that's and then when it gets to the point where it's not going to work, then let it go. Or if there's something that you've wanted to do for ages and you've put a lot of energy into it and then it doesn't really work, you've got to say, okay, I'm going to let that go for now, post it somewhere, and then see if it comes back another time in a different way, in a different format. And that's what they do quite often.
Do you mean that you have to be almost quite pragmatic and quite, I don't know, almost step back from everything that you're working on occasionally and just see if it actually does have legs, if it has got a future? Because we can all be quite, I don't know, in the weeds with it all. You can get stuck into your projects and you can head down and you can maybe work on something too long before you realise that it's not what people want, it's not what customers are buying.
It's so important to keep aware and be in the reality of what exactly, as you say, maybe what you've got isn't quite right, but maybe it just needs a bit of tweaking and it could be perfect. So it's just really don't stay so stubborn about something you want to do that's got to be a certain way. Always stay open to change and surrender to whatever that ends up looking like.
Yeah. And you mentioned earlier on the activism, and that's been a really strong thread throughout your career. And when you talk about the fact that you're very passionate about all your projects, I think that leads into the fact that you are an activist at heart. You want to, I think I remember hearing you say, I'm committed to creating a better world for the next generation.
Yes.
That was from your TEDx talk, The Return of the Wise Woman, which I really loved. I loved that talk.
Oh, thank you. Well, that was in 2012.
That was in 2012, and that was like, and now it feels like we're in the age of activism. Do you think that is the way to live and build businesses with purpose today, is to think of the causes as well and the impact that you want to see down the line in 5 years and 10 years, and make your business and your kind of what you're working on align with that?
I think it's essential. I think to do something without purpose, and I call it sole purpose, is just a waste of time, life and energy. Everything that we do, including starting a business, really should come from the heart and should come from a vision of wanting to create something better for the generations to come, better for our community, better for ourselves, healthier, well-being. Not invent something that is going to be made of plastic that's going to end up in the sea right from the beginning. And I think that business is getting a lot better about that. Small businesses and large businesses are realising that we have one world here and we don't want to destroy it. So I think that there is a much more consciousness and awareness than there used to be. When I first brought out Seed, there was no talk about sustainability. Now it's become everybody's sustainable, but are they really? I mean, we need to all look closely at how we can improve all the time. And of course, it's become a bit of greenwashing as far as the big companies are concerned. But the big companies have to change too. And I think just being conscious about everything we do, whether it's work, whether it's personal, whether it's in relationships, it's about staying true to ourselves and coming from that integrity that I talked about earlier, and that transparency and really meaning it.
And that's, I think, what is really original about your approach to business, is that you don't speak about a business or work as being separate from the rest of someone's life. It's like everything is so closely entwined, and you can't almost distinguish like what is your professional life and what is your personal life. Everything is in the mix. So you have
to... Yeah. That's it's a really holistic aspect. I mean, it is all the same thing. If we're doing work that we really hate, we're going to be unhappy and it's going to affect our health generally. And it's not necessarily going to help anybody else either. So it's like, it's whether it's our personal life, our professional life, our personal philosophy, it really is one thing. And again, I think that is the feminine way, that we do bring everything together in one way, in one collective way of looking at how we want to live and how we want to work and how we want to be with our community and our families and our friends. And we're not all perfect. I'm certainly not perfect. In fact, again, part of the Seed Manifesto, I'm not, the last point in the manifesto is I'm not perfect, but I'm doing the best I can. That's as much as we can ask for, really.
I like that as a mantra. And Lynn, when we first met, and it must be about 10, 20 years ago, I remember asking you about the link to Absolutely Fabulous. And I remember you turning to me and just being like, oh, for God's sake, won't anyone let it go? And at that point, I think you were so tired of people drawing that parallel. And then not that long, a couple of years ago, I saw you on This Morning and you were talking about that link, and it was like your whole outlook about it had changed. You were like, if people stick that on my gravestone, so be it, I'm just accepting. So I'd love to know, like, how has that constant sort of association with Jennifer Saunders' character in Absolutely Fabulous, how has that helped or hindered you throughout your kind of later career?
Well, I did used to find it really irritating because I so believed in all the work I was doing, and I still do with women's empowerment, that I felt that it was like, oh, it makes everything look so like silly. But I find it so funny. I mean, again, on social media, I don't know if you ever see, they have these tiny clips where they'll take one gag and they just take it out of context and put it onto Instagram, and it's hysterical. And I've realised that it hasn't done me any harm. It may have made me added to my general legend. It may have sort of distracted at times from some things I really cared about. But in a way, I asked for it. I was reading an article that came out about me years ago, specifically. Not that I sit here reading my old press cuttings, but there was a reason. I was being interviewed by the same publication. I just wanted to see what they'd said like 30 years ago. And I'm reading this thing, and the journalist did not get me at all. I mean, she didn't realise that I'm joking half the time. But I was larger than life in the PR days. And I did have this crazy sort of life. And I did PR for Dawn and Jennifer because I was PR for Lenny Henry for many years, and love Lenny, love them all. And so through him, I met Dawn and Jennifer. I started working with them. I'd introduced them to the fashion industry. I think it was one of the first Fab episodes that the characters were Patsy and Adina were behind the scenes at a big fashion awards, and that really did happen when I took Dawn and Jennifer to the beginning of the British Fashion Awards and got them to give one of the awards out. And they were backstage with the models, and there was so much stuff there that they did pick up on. And Jennifer has said in her own book, yes, it was based on Lynn, because wherever Lynn was, there were things happening. So, I guess I was very, very oversensitive. And it was a waste, really, because Jennifer asked me to go on to one of the early programmes as a sort of guest appearance. And I was all very, no, I wouldn't do that. Of course, now I would have loved to have gone on it and showed it to my grandchildren. I mean, they've never heard of Absolutely Fabulous, and they know nothing about it. So it would have been lovely to have shown them the whole thing. But yeah, I'm a larger-than-life character, and I didn't walk around with a bottle of body in my hand and fall all over the place or wear Christian Lacroix. But it was a very, very funny, brilliant show. And I'm really, as I've got older and more mellow, I've realised that if anything is a compliment to being somebody interesting. And, I did write a book at one time called Absolutely Now. So, I can't, it hasn't done me any harm at all. In fact, it's an honour in a way, because Dawn and Jennifer and the programme, Joanna Lumley and all that, this was kind of big, and Ruby Wax, who I also was friends with and also had access to all sorts of things about my life that she definitely shared, were real pioneers in women's comedy. And so, and as I'm all about feminism and women's empowerment, women's entertainment is also very important. So great that I could inspire something which was such a trailblazer for women's entertainment.
No, I love it, and I think that it is a massive nod and a real, I don't know, it's just aspects of a character, isn't it? It's not like the whole thing was based on you, but just snippets of things, that experiences that obviously Jennifer had through you. It is. I think it should be seen as like an homage, shall we say?
Yes, let's call it an homage. I mean, when it was irritating was when it was the only thing people wanted me to talk about, and I was like, no. But, c'est la vie. That's fine. It's just part of the many things that I've done, and yes, let's call it homage. I like that.
And now you're still so busy. So I sent in the intro that you're in your 70s, but one, you don't look like you're in your 70s, and two, you certainly don't act like you're in your 70s because you've got so much going on. So do you feel like we human beings are living longer, so we need to find purposeful ways to keep working later in life. And especially, I suppose, women, do you feel like we have a lot more to offer as we get older and our responsibilities change? Like, what is the role of the wise woman? I think you've coined the phrase the wise woman.
Yes, in fact, my own podcast, Frankly Speaking, which I will be bringing out again soon, I talk about podcasts for the wise women everywhere. And I mean wise women of all ages, because you don't have to be in your 70s to be a wise woman. But on the other hand, if you have lived a long life and you've done lots of things, there is a certain amount of wisdom, and you've been blessed, as I have, with reasonably good health, and I live healthily, and I am healthy, really, then I think it's really important that we can share that experience and that wisdom that only comes from life's experience with others, and particularly with younger people as well. And my oldest I've got 7 grandchildren, and my oldest is 20, and my youngest is 7, I think, 6 or 7. And Lola May, who is my oldest granddaughter, it's wonderful talking to her about, generationally what's going on in life. I've just been away in Thailand with her and her mother, so there were the 3 generations of us, and we had the best time, and we had loads. We do have loads in common. We see each other back here too. We all love dancing, and we do ecstatic dance, not 5 rhythms it's called. My daughter's a teacher, and we've got so much in common, and so I think Lola's a very wise woman, but I do think that a lot of my brilliant women friends who I loved so deeply passed away, and it's part of my heartbreak is that there is Anita Roddick, Gabrielle Roth, who created 5 Rhythms, Sue Lloyd-Roberts, who was one of the leading women activist journalists for the BBC for many years. I've lost so many friends far too prematurely. It is heartbreaking. So I feel like if I'm lucky enough still to be here, then it's part of what I owe in a way to my friends that haven't made it, to keep spreading the word that we all believed in so strongly, which is, feminism, equality, the environment, human rights, all the things you're caring about, business, sole purpose. I represent all my friends who haven't made it, as well as those who are still here. Far too many of my friends died prematurely, and I don't know why. I was part of the AIDS generation, so I lost a lot of gay male friends who were in the fashion world particularly, but so many of my friends haven't made it through. So that's it. I'm here with all of them on my shoulder, sort of doing what we all believe in.
Oh, Lynn, that's such a powerful sentiment. And yeah, you're keeping all those fires burning on behalf of all the people who've been with you on the journey. Thank you so much for joining me on the show. It's genuinely been an honour to chat to you for the past hour. And thank you for talking about confidence and female empowerment and intergenerational information exchange. It's all been fantastic. She's Lynn's on Instagram, so do go follow her to find out more about Seed and her retreats and her upcoming return of her podcast. And please do give Sound Advice a follow, subscribe, or review if you like the show. It really does help us to reach more listeners. And please don't forget to check out the wealth of support and further information on sage.com/podcast. Thanks so much for joining us today. See you soon for more Sound Advice.